believe it or not. Hey! Okay, gentlemen, and if any ladies come on, ladies as well, I'd like to discuss a few things today about the Megillah. We're going to discuss Megillat Ruth. I think Megillat Ruth has more interesting points to see than Bamidbar. Although, having said that, there are plenty of interesting things to see in every parasha, but I think there were some very interesting things that I'd like to speak about. Okay, let's have a look. Yeah, okay. Let's start with the following. Hi, Harris. So we are right at the beginning. We're in Ruth. Parag Pasuk Aleph.
1269.
Pardon, 1269 if you have an art scroll Chumash. Vayir, it was Bimei Shefot Hashvoftim. Shefot Hashoftim, I'm sorry. It was in the day that the judges judged. Vahira Ba'aretz, and there was a famine in the land. Vayelech ish mi Beis Lechem Yehuda. A man went from what was known as Beis Lechem Yehuda, so Beis Lechem in the Shevet of Yehuda, Logur B'stei Moav, to journey out into the fields of Moab, Hu V'ishta Ushnei Banov, him and his wife and his two children. Okay? Now, we know the whole story because we've heard this many times. This man, we see afterwards, is called Elimelech, and Elimelech was one of the richest people of the time, and he was overwhelmed by the needs of the community and by the charity that he had to give, and he wasn't able to give that anymore. He just felt it was too much. And therefore, because he felt it was too much, he left. He moved out. Okay? I think there'll be plenty of people that would feel that would be considered like almost a desertion of the Jewish people. I think Chazal don't have very, very positive things to say about Elimelech for what he did, for leaving the Jewish people in the lurch. When you think about it, this is a really important juncture at the time. Not only that, this is a juncture that needed this person. Who else is going to help the people if not the people with money? You know, I'd like to compare and contrast this almost. There's a famous story that they tell at the destruction of the Second Temple. The Gemara in Gittin tells us this story, that they besieged the city of Jerusalem. And there were three rich people in Jerusalem, and those three rich people decided that they were going to feed the entire city of Jerusalem for however long it takes. And they had a tremendous wealth, and the Gemara says they could have lasted out, some say 7 years, some say 20 years, something like that, 20 years or something like that, with the stores that they had. Imagine, at one point or another, what would have ended up happening is what? They would have just given up, probably. I mean, how long can you... Usually when you besiege a town, what are you doing? You're cutting off their supplies, and because you cut off their supplies, you're hoping that at one point or another, you're going to choke them and everyone's going to come out and they're going to surrender. If you have enough supplies, how long could you stay in? However long, right? You're not going to make me come out. So these three rich people, they realized the tsaras that the Jewish people were in, and they were willing to put themselves forward and to pay to foot the entire bill. Elimelech did the opposite. He left. I'm going, goodbye, kol tov. I won't have anything to do with this. Already that should disturb us. However, here comes the important point, and I feel this is a very, very important point. I think especially as I start getting involved, even though I don't like getting involved, but you often hear about, I don't know if you know the word, the dirty P word. It's called politics. Yeah? You thought it was something else, yeah? Yeah, it's politics. Politics is terrible, it's awful. People get involved and people get entrenched in certain things. And many a time I've been involved with certain things. I try to keep out of these things because there's not much that I can do about them anyway. So just feel in the end of the day, it just takes up a lot of your time and a lot of your energy, and you don't get anywhere. But here is a fundamental issue. And I'm going to mention the issue first, and then I'll give you examples of this throughout. We can go throughout history, but I can give you current examples almost of this. Who was in charge of the Jewish people at the time? There were a group of people known as the Shoftim, right? What's a Shofet literally? A judge. There is something important and something powerful about a monarchy, because a king has a power of leadership, but also a power of enforcement. Whereas the Shoftim were great people, but you know what the issue is? As great as they were, they didn't really have the ability to do anything. And that's very problematic. That makes huge problems. So you have over here one of the richest people. You have Elimelech. And Elimelech says, suddenly people see, a removal van coming outside Elimelech's house. What's going on? We're packing up. You're packing up. It's a minute of a famine. Yeah, I know. Where are you going? We're going to Moab. What are you going to do in Moab? We're going to live there. What about the fact that everybody needs you here? Tough, right? People will just say tough. So this is the man that can support the entire Jewish people, and instead of supporting the Jewish people, he says, it's tough luck on you, and he just leaves, just like that. Now, if there was real leadership, what would a leader do? Make him stay, right? Because they would say, you cannot leave. So what do you mean, I want to leave? You can't leave. You're deserting your people. You cannot leave. We're not going to let you go. But because Vayhi b'mei shafot hashoftim, it was at the time that the judges were judging, but they didn't have the power or the ability to enforce their judgments. So Elimelech says, I'm a rich guy. I'm wealthy. Nobody's going to tell me what to do or what not to do. I'm out of here. And what does everybody else say? Please stay. And he says, no. Right? Make me. Yeah? I think they used to make the joke. I know it's a bad joke, and I think there'll be, if any police officers watch this, they'll be very, very insulted. But I think they used to make the joke about unarmed police officers in this country. Stop, or I'll say stop again. Do you mean? If you have a gun to draw, you have some sort of power on other people. You say stop, or I'll shoot. Okay. Here, stop. I have a baton. Yeah, but I'm too far away from you. Okay, stop, or I'll say stop again. Now, again, I think the police force in this country, they do have guns, and they're an effective police force. I'm not trying to in any way criticize or belittle the police force, but that was a joke that I once heard many years ago. But I think the point of that joke is the point that it's trying to make is, if you don't have power and ability to be able to enforce things, then really in reality, what's your leadership worth? Very little. If I wouldn't say nothing, but I would say very, very little. And it basically is predicated upon what? The consent of the people, right? Going back to the police, actually, they call it policing by consent in this country, right? I mean, that's a positive thing. We don't want policing without consent, because that would mean a sort of like, an anarchy. Like, I don't agree with you being a police officer. Shut up, like you get it over the head, right? So we do need policing with consent. It's a good thing we have policing with consent, right? However, what we need to realize is the great danger that lies in the lack of true leadership. If a nation, if a people, if a town, if a city, if a country doesn't have true leadership, they're in real trouble. Now, what's true leadership? Okay, everybody can argue their point, what is or what isn't. I don't even want to get political. Some people will tell you Barack Obama was the best thing since sliced bread. Some people will tell you he was a horrible leader. Some people will tell you Donald Trump is a wonderful leader. Look, he does exactly what he says. Some people say he's a politically incorrect buffoon. Do you mean? Different people have different, it's not really for me to start commenting whether he is or who isn't. That's not the point. But the one thing that we can all agree upon is no leadership leads to anarchy. So, for example, I'll give you an example. Let's take current examples, and these I'm sure many people could add other examples to this, but let's take a current example, right? I was on a panel last night, and this is a panel about mental health. And we had a discussion. It was funny that they actually put me on this panel. And I said to them, I said, I don't know why you put me on a panel about mental health. To my left was Deborah Fraser, who is a clinical, whether it is a clinical psychologist or whether she's a counselor. I'm not sure exactly what she studied. But, she's an educated woman that has studied mental health in depth for many years. To my right was a doctor who was in charge of Maina Yeshua Hospital, a big hospital, religious hospital in Bnei Brak, and they've created a new mental health wing, and this is a religious man that has tremendous years of expertise. I mean, I said to him, I was sitting next to him, I said, doctor, can I ask you honestly, how many years did it take you to train? And he said it took about 13 years. So there you go. I mean, he's trained for 13 years in mental health. What do I have? I have once or twice that people have come to me and mentioned to them their mental health problems. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Michael, I would never come into your optician and just assume that I could start testing people's eyes. What's better, 1 or 2? You have no idea what you're talking about. You can do 1 or 2 from today till tomorrow. 3 or 4, I'll write out a prescription. Everyone's going to get headaches and bad eyesight. Yeah? You have to learn these things. So somebody said to me, the question that was then asked is, what can we do as a community? Or what can the rabbis do to lessen the plight of the people with mental illness, or to help financially those people that are struggling with mental illness? What do we have as a community provide? So I tried to say, look, we as a community try to provide as much as we can. But quite honestly, it's very hard to provide. It's extremely expensive. Mental health is a very, very expensive thing. And you might say, well, physical health is expensive also. It's true, but I think there are a lot more people that suffer from mental health issues than big mental health issues, or even minor mental health issues that can be very expensive, much more than you will find people that suffer from major physical health issues. And it takes many sessions and many weeks and many months and maybe sometimes many years to help people, right? On the other hand, people say, why don't the Rabbonim do X, Y, and Z? Yeah? Now, sometimes the question is fair, but many times the question is unfair. It's like you make it out as if, if I stood at the pulpit and I said, from now on, I think everybody needs to give X amount of money to charity. I decree this upon our entire community. What would happen? I think people would have a good laugh. Because that's what would happen. I don't think anybody would go, oh, the rabbi said we should all give X amount to charity every year. Let me Sunday give him an empty, let me write the check out to him on Sunday. Let me make sure he has it. So I just don't want him to have to wait till Monday to have to get my check. People don't listen, right? And it makes a very, very difficult conversation. And it makes for very, very difficult issues, because people will then blame the leadership, but the leadership doesn't really have the power to enforce certain things. Similarly, I spoke to somebody recently about a get issue where this person says, I'm struggling, I'm not sure if this person is going to or not going to give a get to his wife. I said, well, where is he going? He's going to Israel. So I spoke to one of the Dayanim. The Dayanim said, oh, that's the best thing that can happen. He's making Aliyah, fantastic. I said, why? He goes, because in Israel, the Beis Din and the police work hand in hand. And if somebody decides not to give a get after being asked one too many times, you know what they do? They arrest you and stick you in jail, right? And that's, I think, in general, it's a pretty good deterrent for people to try to give their get. I would have thought. I mean, you have to be very, very, very entrenched in your machlokes with your wife, yeah, to decide not to give her a get and to sit in jail instead. I refuse to give a get. Well, you're going to sit in jail for the next 6 years. That's fine, but I refuse to give a get. I mean, come, get with the program. Do you know what happens in this country when we want someone to give a get? We say, give a get. Do you know what he says? I don't want to. We say, give a get. He says, I don't want to. And that's it. We don't really have any power. So the Beis Din says, we'll put you in Cherem. Sometimes, oh, Maxim's here. Mazel tov to Maxim on the birth of a baby boy today.
Mazel tov.
Yeah. So the Beis Din doesn't really have, the Beis Din have the power to enforce it. And even a Cherem very rarely actually does what it's supposed to do. I remember once we were, there was an argument, a financial argument between two parts of a very, very big family from Vienna. And I was invited to this person's house for Shavuot. This goes back many, many years. This probably goes back to 2000 or something. It's almost 18, 20 years ago. I was at Maita's house for Shavuot, and I went to them to bring them flowers to thank them. And I come outside, and directly outside his flat, there was someone that put up a patchkevila. Patchkevila are, those Jerusalem notices that they hang up everywhere. With a glue, they just come up to these notice boards and they hang up these notices. Do you know what I'm talking about, Michael? No, do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
Have you not seen them? You've not been to Meir Sharm? Go to Meir Sharm and you see on the walls, they have these things, people who've passed away, etc. Anyway, they had this big sign there, and the sign says, Mr. So-and-so, and that was the person I was eating by, has refused to show up to the Beth Din, and we have hereby placed him in Cherem. And my brother-in-law calls me up, are you eating by him? I understand he's in Cherem. I'm like, I have no idea. I did end up eating by them. I don't think anybody really put the guy in Cherem. So it's ineffective. And that's the problem. If you look at the parsha in Devarim that speak about judges, it says, Shoftim v'shotrim titin lecha. You have to make judges, but you also have to have a policing arm to it. Because if you're only going to have a justice system that's not going to have an arm of a police that cannot enforce what it does, what's going to end up happening? Anarchy. Yeah? Nothing. And this is what happens over here with Elimelech. That's the tragedy of the Jewish people. That's what we start off Vayehi. Vayehi always means it's a tragic situation. Whenever we use the word Vayehi, it means tragic. And we say Vayehi, and it was a tragic thing happened. Bimei shvot hashoftim, when the judges judged. Do you know what was the tragedy? The tragedy was the fact that the Jewish people were left without an effective leadership. And it's the other way around. I mean, we don't have to tell you what good leadership can do. Yeah, it can do tremendous things for almost any type of organization. So it's a great thing. But Elimelech leaves because there's nobody there to force him to stay. Okay, that's the first point that I wanted to bring. Okay, here we have a very interesting thing. I was listening to a shir. I didn't hear the shir to the end, but I had my own thoughts about it, and I'd like to share those with you as well. You have these two women, Orpah and Ruth, who are Moabite women that marry into the family of Naomi. And they married in the family of Naomi, and they live with Naomi for 10 years, and then Naomi's husband and her two sons die, and Naomi says, I think it's time for me to go back home. And Naomi picks up and packs up her stuff, and she's going back home to Beis Lechem, and the two women walk along with her. And then they get to a certain juncture, and Naomi says to them, he says, look, it's really nice of you, very sweet. I don't think this is a good idea. Why not? We just don't think this is a good idea. I don't think you should be doing this. Go home, you'll marry somebody from your own nation, you'll have nice husbands, you'll have nice homes. What are you coming with me for? I don't have money. I have no children. You're not Jewish. What are you doing? And Orpah says, you know what? You're right. And she gives her mother-in-law a kiss, and she goes. Ruth says, I'm not going. And Naomi says, what are you going to come for? What are you doing this for? Don't do this to yourself, etc. So she gives her this whole long drasha, and Ruth says, no. I'm going to kill where you go, I will go. Where you sleep, I will sleep, etc., etc. The entire long monologue that she gives her says, Naomi, okay, you want to come along? Come along. And Ruth comes along, and we know the end of the story. There's a very interesting thing that happens with Orpah. Because Orpah becomes the mother of, guess who she's the mother of? Very interesting. Goliath. Yeah? If you look in Shmuel, you'll find there was a lady by the name of Orpah. Changed around from Orpah to Orpah. We won't discuss that tonight. But there's a change there, but it's Orpah, and she has 4 strong children, one of them being Goliath. Who beats Goliath, by the way? Where does David come from? He comes from Ruth. Ruth is his great-great-grandmother, right? So it's very interesting. It's like a battle. It's like coming full circle. Very, very interesting, the whole thing. But the Gemara tells us when Orpah left Naomi, she did a tremendous amount of sins. The Gemara goes on about telling about exactly what happened and what she did, etc., etc. And I don't want to go into it because it's graphic and it's not the nicest thing to speak about. But she went in a terrible direction. And the question, why did she do that? It sounds very strange. You have a woman here who's going with Naomi. She was about to go back, about to become Jewish. And Naomi says, that's a bad idea. She says, you know what? You're right. Then the Gemara goes on to say that this woman went back to her nation and sort of became almost a harlot, slept with tens of people on the same night that she went back. How does that happen? How do you have that change? It's extreme. Pardon?
Anyway.
So that's the question. I don't know if it's in it. But it's a very extreme thing. So how do you understand that? So I had the following idea, and then this is also based on, again, I heard Rabbi Y.Y. Jacobson, who came for the seed dinner, spoke brilliantly at the seed dinner. Did you go to seed dinner that time? Yeah? You heard him? Yeah? So I heard him on Torah Anytime. He gives many good shurim. So he spoke about this a little bit, and he said, imagine you had a woman who lived with Naomi and Naomi's family for 10 years. In the olden days, the days of paganism, it was not a very nice world to live in, right? There was no real morality. There was no real law. Everything went. We, the Jewish people, gave the world its morality. So, and in the 1800s, we accept morality, and people start saying this is the moral thing to do, etc., etc. We say, yeah, we've been saying this for the last 3,000 years. You've just caught up after 3,000 years to say, yeah, this is the morally right thing to do. This, every person can feel inside them that this is what they should do. Not for the last 3,000 years, they haven't. Yeah. Suddenly it's become this new thing. We've become modern and suddenly become enlightened. And the enlightened people suddenly realize that we've been right all along. Right? But you have this morality that's lacking. So Ruth and Arpa come from a society that lacks morality in its entirety. And they join Naomi and they suddenly start seeing a very, very different world. Where morality makes a difference, where the way people behave makes a difference. It's all a very, very big deal. Yeah? And Arpa watches that. And what would you expect from Arpa at this point? She must be impressed. You can't help but being impressed. You ever met somebody who's like lows about everybody else and you just say, I can't help but being impressed with this guy or with this woman? There are times where you see that and you say, I'm amazed. So you have Arpa, who should really have said to herself, this is so much deeper, so much more meaningful, so much more moral, so much better than what I ever had in my life. Hi, Phil. That she should want to stay. But Naomi says, no, why? What for? You don't have to. You'll have a better time somewhere else. Go somewhere else. Go, leave. And Naomi convinces her. And Arpa gives her a kiss, says, thank you very much, goodbye, turns around and leaves. At this point, what's going through her mind? She comes home and says, oh, you came home. Yeah. She's got something to prove now. Because she's got to show, wait a minute, if I've not stuck it out with Naomi, if I've not remained with this woman who's full of morality, who's full of the fear of God, etc., I need to create almost an ideology out of this. You ever know people create an ideology about being wrong? So she comes home and she says, I never want to be like Naomi. Forget it. I'm going to do whatever I want to. Find me a man. Find me 2 men. Find me 5 men. 10 men. Let's go. She's got a point to make. Yeah? Because deep down, there's a certain amount of feeling inside her that says, why did you do that? Why did you do something so stupid? Why did you leave? Why didn't you stay with these people? They're such good, upright, upstanding people. And Arpa says to herself, you're right. They are good, upstanding people. So how am I going to get around my conscience? How am I going to be able to manage this? you know how you manage this? You become a bedafkenik. You ever met bedafkeniks? They don't do things that make sense. But that's what makes them bedafkeniks. That makes them people that specifically, they do their own thing. Why? Because they feel they want to show the world. Right? Teenagers are a good example of it. You tell teenagers to do something, they do the opposite. Why? They just want to show you that they don't have to listen. Now, nobody's trying to boss them around. In general, we're trying to help them. But because you're trying to help them, they want to show you, I don't need you. Do you know how little I need you? Whatever you tell me, I'll do exactly the opposite. I'm going to show you how little I need you. You're like, why'd you do that? Why are you being stupid? Right? But it's that bedafka inside them. And this is exactly what happened to Arpa over here as well. I find it such an amazing insight, the idea of realizing that there was this real struggle going on inside Arpa, and the only way that Arpa could resolve that struggle that was happening with herself is to say, you know what? Forget it. I want nothing to do with Naomi. I want nothing to do with Rus. I want nothing to do with Judaism. And you know what? The whole thing is stupid. The whole thing doesn't make any sense. I'm going to show everybody that I can do whatever I want to, and it doesn't make a difference. To prove a point.
To prove her own existence or something.
Almost, yeah. Sometimes we need to prove our own existence ourselves, and sometimes we do that in a very bad way. And it's a shame. To prove, don't ever do, and this is the other lesson, don't ever do things just to prove a point. Many times, for example, when it comes to having conversations, you want to make a point. And so you're going to drive that point home, because I want them to know how I feel. Yeah. It's not a clever thing to do. More often than not, it backfires on you, and people are more upset with you. It's not something that works in your favor, works against you. But you wanted to show everybody, didn't you? So you showed them. Yeah, okay, now you showed them. Now you've got it. Now you've done something clever. You get into an argument with your spouse, and you don't want to lose the argument, so you make a big point. You start yelling at them, whatever it is. You want to make the point. Okay, you've insulted them. You won the argument. Now you happy? Yeah? No, but I made a point. I was right. Okay, brilliant. Lovely. What was that all about? Sometimes people get into an argument with their employers because they don't want to be seen as wrong. People have lost their job on stupid arguments, on minutia, for no reason. Because I'm not going to be spoken to like that. All right, fine. Go find a different job. No, but I'm not going to be spoken like that. Okay, fine. You don't want to be spoken to like that? Don't be spoken like that. Here's the door going out. I'm not going to be spoken to like that. Fine, leave. Yeah?
The need to destroy the adversary.
Correct. But in the need to destroy the adversary, whom are they really destroying? They're destroying themselves. Many a time the adversary is not such a big deal, and they're destroying themselves and doing so much more harm to themselves rather than just swallowing their pride or realizing that they were wrong and say, you know what, I was wrong, I made a bad decision, okay, I'll have to stick with it. But to go bedafka, then you really do things wrong to yourself. Oftentimes you end up in a much, much worse situation because you want to prove a point. When you prove a point to people, then you end up making all sorts of mistakes. Never go out there and do something foolish to prove a point, because that's what happens with Arpa, and then the result is someone like Goliath. Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much. Wishing you all a good Yom Tov, all who watched us live. Please, if you did enjoy